He got out of prison after 7 years, and he's got a felony. What's he gonna do? Well, he's in the halfway house, and his boy's like, "Hey, I'm running this. I'm the manager of this telemarketing office. I'll get you a job." So now he's working on the phones for $10 an hour. He's a manager, and he's able to sell drugs out of the office.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So it's not bad.
But they
When you look at it like
also
that.
had raffles too, Sam, for like, if you
Yes.
sell, whoever sells the most, in the next couple hours gets a bag of weed. So there were like little motivations to like keep them selling.
Very, very special guest joining the show today. We have Adam, we have Sam from Telemarketers. Probably my favorite new show of the year. It was one of the most compelling watches that I've had in a long time. Crazy story behind it. It's on Max, it's on HBO. You guys can watch it now. All 3 episodes are out. Incredible story. Let's just start from the top. When did you realize that you had all the golden footage from back in the early days, and it's not just like stuff that's interesting you, that it would be interesting for a national audience?
It's fucking gold. Like the footage was fucking gold when Sam brought it to me on a hard drive, and I'm Sam's cousin, and I'm like I was like the professional documentary filmmaker on the team, whatever that means. And he brought me the footage, and I was just like, this is fucking incredible. Like, we got to do something with this. There's a story here.
Yeah. So Sam, maybe you can walk us through, like, how did you get started working at Civic Development Group?
Yeah.
How'd you get started working there way back in the day?
So and thank you guys. So I was on mute, but I just wanted to thank you guys so much for having us. We're both fans, and really appreciate all the kind words. So thank you so much. So I started when I was 14. I left high school. I didn't want to go to school anymore. I wanted to drop out. My parents are hippies, God bless them, and they were like, "You can leave school, but you have to get a job." They were very like loose, chill, cool parents, but you can leave, but you have to get a job. So I went to McDonald's and Burger King, and they both told me I was too young. And I grew up in central New Jersey, in a little town called Highland Park next to Rutgers University. And you're too young, you're whatever. So I told one of my buddies, I'm like, listen, I got it. My parents said I have to get a job. And he was 15 at the time, and he's like, yo, I got a spot for you, man. I know a place, they'll hire you at 14. So I remember we rode our bikes into New Brunswick, and he brought me to this call center, walked in, and I remember they had me read the script, like, hey, Sam Lipman-Stern calling on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police or whatever. And they hired me right on the spot. And so I started working there when I was 14. And I remember the first day I walked into the office, there was all these like built dudes doing push-ups next to the water fountains. And then you walk in and there's mug shots of all the callers on the walls, like trophies. And yeah, that's how I started the position. I ended up working there until I was 22. So off and on from 2001 to 2009.
It's a fascinating story because you're calling to raise money for law enforcement, but most people that work there are convicted felons. Like they're just out of jail, just out of prison. It's one of the only places that they can get hired. So they're calling on behalf of law enforcement. The one thing I didn't understand necessarily about the business model, because I have worked in call centers before, is it didn't seem like there weren't commissions off anything you guys brought in. So what was the motivation? Why would the callers try so hard to close these sales if they weren't getting any money on the back end of it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I mean, for me at 14 in the early 2000s, like $10 an hour was a dream come true, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more than minimum wage. I think McDonald's was paying $6 an hour at the time, something like that. But so for me, it was a little, as a kid, it was $10 an hour was good. But for the most part, it was just literally the fact that, look, you get out of prison, right? You just did, like we had our boy ex Santino the God in episode 1 and 2, and he got out of prison after 7 years, and he's got a felony. What's he gonna do? Well, he's in the halfway house, and his boy's like, "Hey, I'm running this. I'm the manager of this telemarketing office. I'll get you a job." So now he's working on the phones for $10 an hour. He's a manager, and he's able to sell drugs out of the office.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
So it's not bad.
But they also had raffles too, Sam, for like, if you sell, whoever sells the most, in the next couple hours gets a bag of weed. So they were like little motivations to like keep them selling.
Yeah.
They also, it was very competitive. I mean, they would put our names on a board of like the top callers. One other thing is, if you didn't hit like $200 an hour, you were gone. So they kept it competitive. And I think for young kids that were like, high school dropouts or like college kids, it was, better than working at McDonald's. And then for, ex-cons, it was a job that they could have and they can still be wild as fuck in the office.
Yeah, it does sound like a lot of fun, actually. Looking at some of that footage, you guys looked like you were having fun at work, which is, I guess it's good to see. Maybe the work that was being done wasn't on the up and up, but you guys were enjoying yourselves. Well, tell me about the first time you met Pat, because I love Pat. He seems like a genuinely good, genuine, kind-hearted guy. Maybe went down a wrong road or two at some point in his life, but a lot of people go through their own struggles. But Pat seems like a good human being, and I'm curious to know what the vibe was like when you first met him.
Yeah. So Pat, everything you said is absolutely correct. I mean, Pat is he's a great human being. What you see is what you get. What you see on the camera in the show is exactly how Pat is when you meet him in real life. And when I first met Pat, Pat had worked there in the 90s, and then I guess he came back in the early 2000s. But Pat walked up to me one day and he's like, "Hey, can I bum a schmog?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's on break. He's like, "A cigarette, a schmog." And he's like, "Hamilton-Stern, you're a great caller. I heard you." I'm like, "No, my name's Lipman-Stern." He's like, "Oh, I thought your name was Hamilton-Stern." And that's how we first met. He thought my name was Hamilton-Stern, and he asked me to bum a schmog and with a cigarette.
No, maybe not the greatest with names. Sometimes you'll see that in the third episode.
Yeah, not the greatest names, not the greatest with names. I mean, look, Pat was really well known at the office. Like, if you ask anybody that worked in that office, like, who do you remember from back in the day? Like, even before the documentary came out, Pat would be one of the top people that was super memorable. He had a heart of gold. He's the guy that would, if anybody needed anything, he would help them. Like, if your car breaks down outside of the job, he's waiting after work to help you until the tow truck comes or fix the tire. Just the fact that, he was in addiction, but he was actually working, a 9 to 5, I think is really respectable. I think, and there was a reason for that. I mean, he never wants to ask anybody for anything like outside, besides doing a job. He was someone who really needed to work to support him and his wife. But yeah, we were filming Office Hijinks, and Pat he was so charismatic. He loved being in front of the camera, and he just became kind of the star when we would bust the camera out at work, And then Pat was like, we started filming with Pat. All right, let's make a documentary about Pat and about this crazy office. And then Pat was like, "No, man, there's shady stuff going on. Let's make a documentary to expose this, this wild industry to the world."
Did you ever get any real big backlash from any of the other folks that were in the office? I mean, with people that have multiple felonies and they're on probation and parole, did anybody give you shit about pulling out a camera at that time?
It's kind of interesting. It was a big dysfunctional family. Everyone was kind of felt like they were at the bottom of society. I was a 14-year-old high school dropout, graffiti writer, just felt like a loser at the time. I didn't think I could ever be I never really thought I had a real future, and all the ex-cons were in kind of similar dark places, just getting out of prison and halfway houses. But what that did is it created this really this dysfunctional family environment where everybody showed each other respect. If you came in there and you showed respect, you got respect. So no, I grew up there. Essentially, they saw me in there from 14 to, my early 20s. So I really grew up in that office. And I always showed everyone respect. So everyone liked me. And so, yeah, nobody ever gave us any crap except for when it was discovered, I think, by the high ups that I had put YouTube videos up and I got fired. But in the office, no one was ever like, no, they just thought it was like, hey, that's Sam. He's got a camcorder or whatever.
Mm-hmm. What can you walk us through the origin story behind Civic Development Group, when it started, who the founders of the company were, and how they got their feet, how they get their feet off the ground, like getting things going with the were they always a telemarketing firm, or were they doing other types of fundraising?
So I don't know the full story. I don't want to misquote, but I mean, essentially these guys created a telemarketing company for police organizations, I think out of their garage or, a small office, I believe in the late 80s or early 90s. And then it just grew from there. It went from a tiny little office where they're calling, citizens around New Jersey off a phone book. Hey, let's, hey, can you donate to the cops or whatever? And then it just slowly grew. So it went from a tiny little office then to a bigger office in New Brunswick. And then it turned into, I think there were a few offices in New Jersey. And then it became, I believe they had about 50 offices all across the country, even in Canada. And now this is coming out. I've been getting emails from people all over the country who worked at CDG. So it became the number one telemarketing fundraising company in the country. And just from that same model, you call people up, hey, can you donate to the officers, the families of the officers killed in the line of duty? We're going to give you a sticker for your car. And, that's how it got built. And we're trying to sound like cops on the phone. That was like part of the training.
Yeah, that's always fascinating to me, hearing you guys put on the different voices when you call somebody. I remember I got phone calls from you guys back in the day, and I was like, oh shit, a cop's calling me right now asking me for money for other cops. Like, it's a little intimidating when you think you're talking to a police officer when you get that call and you don't expect it. Did you have to work on voices?
Workshop?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I got trained. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got trained by some of the best. Brian Getz, who's in the documentary, he trained me when I was like 14, and he had a great cop voice. And
I just love the idea of a 14-year-old calling you and trying to sound like a cop and just intimidating like some.
Hey, how's it going? Sam Lipman-Stern calling up. Yeah, you like put on that. What does a cop sound like in a cartoon? Is like that was what we tried to do.
Do you purposely? Because I've gotten some of the calls recently that sound like you're in trouble, and it's like a cop calling about to be like, come down to the station, but instead it's like, hey, give us money.
No, I mean, that was basically that's the same exact thing. So what you're getting, those calls are just an evolution of what we were doing. I mean, it's the same concept, the same voices, and that was, we never said you're going to be in trouble, but you're trying to sound like you are, some officer from, New Jersey or from wherever, and you're just like sitting at your desk and between shifts, you're like calling for a donation.
Now, how exactly did the financials work? How do they wash the money and make it, was it entirely like the way where they were doing it? Was it legal in a sense, or was they just using loopholes, or was it found to be illegal in the end?
Yeah, I mean, it was so they really, this industry really thrives in legal loopholes, or kind of in that gray area between legality and illegality. It's legal. What we were doing originally was we were calling for police organizations and charities, firefighters, veterans, and cancer organizations. And, oftentimes it would be 90-10 split. So the company, Civic Development Group, gets 90%, and the police or the other organization gets 10%. So that's totally legal. What's not legal is what they did when they changed to this PMC model, where they thought that it was a loophole to essentially make the callers employees of the Fraternal Order of Police or the organizations. So then they started telling people 100% of your donation goes. Like I would be like, oh, you're going to make, 100% of your generous donation will go to the Fraternal Order of Police. And that's was decided by the government that it wasn't legal. And that's why CDG got shut down. But it's still going to this day, this industry, and they work in this kind of gray, they try to work in this gray area.
And it's amazing how close those names are that you use, because you mentioned veterans too, and with the documentary taking place, it was 2008, right? 2006, 2008. That's primarily when the surge happened in like Fallujah and Al Anbar, and there's all kinds of people that were losing their legs and losing limbs. And one of the biggest organizations that helps out with that is DVA, the Disabled Veterans of America. And you guys use the Disabled American Veteran, the DAV, at the same time when there was huge pushes. So it was really smart, the organizations that they picked to really target and play on people's emotions based on what was in the news too. It was brutal. I mean, to do that is crazy.
That's the model. I mean, that was the model. I mean, we were calling for, the biggest police organization in the United States, the Fraternal Order of Police, and their chapters all over the country. And then we were calling on behalf of like other pretty big police unions, like International Union of Police Associations. But then we were also calling on behalf of these sound-alike charities, which I didn't know. When I first started, I didn't know it was a scam.
Right.
It was just, we slowly learned this. But, Cancer Fund of America was a classic example. If you look them up, I mean, this was a family operation that got taken down. They were on American Greed. But they just had all these cancer charities set up, and it was total fucking bullshit.
And when you name yourself, or when you switch to the consultant model and you give yourselves the title officer, that's another one of those things where it's like, I don't know if that's illegal. Like you can give yourself whatever title you want at your own company. You can be officer and be like, yeah, this is Officer so-and-so calling on behalf of police. And it sounds so legitimate that you got a lot of people to give up a lot of money for a cause that they didn't know that they were actually supporting, which was just telemarketers. You guys raised a lot of money for telemarketers, it turns out. You did a great job of that. And then at the end, I guess we'll spoil the ending. If you haven't seen it, you can fast forward for the next like 5 minutes or whatever. But the culmination of the documentary, you meet with Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. And I don't know how edited it was, but certainly from viewing it, it made it seem like he just blew you guys off. And to me, Pat gave a pretty compelling presentation. He was like, he's excited. He was energetic. That might have like overwhelmed Blumenthal a little bit, but it seemed like he was just doing it to show his face and then kind of forgetting about you guys the second that the meeting was over when he cut it off abruptly. Have you heard any follow-up from his office or from any other government official after the show has finally aired?
Well, I can tell you that the scene that you saw in the movie in the show was almost unedited. Basically, Blumenthal said his office gave us an hour to do the interview, and he actually gave us 7 minutes from the time he entered the room till the time he left. And that was, I think the scene in the show is like 6 minutes. So like it's almost entirely unedited. And then and then you see his team comes back in and says like, look, we've got meetings booked back to back. And it's like, well, you gave us an hour. Like, yeah, what are you talking about? But yeah, he hasn't, we've followed up numerous times. We haven't heard back. He made a statement to the LA Times. The LA Times followed up and his team responded by saying it was a very, very generic statement. He didn't acknowledge Pat Paspis at all. He basically his team said, we take these telemarketing scams very seriously, and we'll look into this. And that was about it.
Yeah, it seems like he was a real sack of shit in that interview. It was bad the way that he treated you guys. And I don't know what laws can be changed because, everybody that you've spoken with in Washington has said it's a change that needs to happen at the legislative level, where they need to figure out a way to codify this so that it is illegal and it's harder to operate out of the gray areas. Have you guys given any thought to what specific laws could be enacted that would I guess, put this industry, off the map?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we've been following it for so long, and this has been going on. You can find old like New York Times articles from like the early 1900s describing the same scam.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on for a long, long time. And honestly, I think the first step is for the major police organizations to speak out about this, because they're the ones that are keeping it going, in my opinion. I think, if the Fraternal Order of Police, again, it's the biggest police organization in the world and the biggest police organization in the United States. And so if they keep using telemarketers to raise their money, and you see that world on this series, I think it's just, they're just going to keep finding loopholes possibly. But I would like to see, they haven't made a statement yet, and I think they need to kind of speak out about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that you would care about unless you actually got. I think that's a big reason why that you constantly play whack-a-mole too. Unless you're like personally affected and you saw your grandma or grandpa get scammed out of thousands of dollars and they're destitute, you simply don't care because there's so many other things going around. Do you think it's a lot of the whack-a-mole? Because one of the parts that stuck out to me in the documentary was they paid, a $300,000 fine? What's a $300,000 fine when you're bringing in $30 million? Like, it's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, basically they keep, they keep for years and years and years, what you see happening is the telemarketing companies will get shut down like whack-a-mole. Mm-hmm. But the organizations can find another one. Sometimes it's literally just a name change from the old one, and that, they keep doing it. So, right now we were so surprised, but I mean, this thing is bigger, crazier, more Wild West than it's ever been. And while we're doing this podcast, the calls are being made. Like you can find them online because people post them.
Yeah. What about AI? Is AI kind of taking over a lot of the telemarketing where they can just program a script and it sounds like there's actually a human being on the other end of the line calling you up about law enforcement?
Yeah. I mean, it's, so I think AI, so what we found out about, I think that's the best thing about this industry is that it gives people jobs. We never wanted to demonize the telemarketers in any way. Like if you're getting out of a halfway house, out of prison, and you have a felony, and they say, "Hey, we can place you in this office," that's great. I mean, they were given a lot of jobs to a lot of people, and I think that was a beautiful thing, including people like me, like teenagers, and that couldn't get jobs elsewhere. So jobs are a good thing. What siphoning money away from legitimate causes, in my opinion, that's not a good thing. Once the way that it's going right now, if the AI continues and the robocalls, I think it's going to end up being where the jobs are just going to be taken away. So the one positive thing that this industry does is going to be lost. Like in episode 3, and not to give away spoilers, but it's just a small spoiler. We get a call from our old friend who died. Mm-hmm. He passed away, and he called us, and his voice, his robotic voice, called us, and he's calling from beyond the grave. So, yeah, AI robocalls are taking away the one positive thing about this industry, which is providing people jobs that might be unemployable, that are in the prison pipeline, or college kids, or high school dropouts.
Yeah. Big T, you got anything?
Yeah, y'all have touched on a lot of the serious stuff, and obviously it's a very serious issue that y'all are dealing with, but I just wanted to, you bring out this camcorder, you see all this just crazy shit going on at this office. Like, what's the most insane thing you ever saw at one of the call centers?
Well, I remember one guy, he was right out of prison, and this one manager who was a total asshole. He actually went on to become a corrections officer. I'm not going to name his name, but this guy, he was a manager, and he was like, yelling at this one caller, and this dude just stood up and started beating that manager's ass in the middle of the aisle. And everyone just drops their headsets and like backing up, like, oh shit. And like this dude's just beating him. And I think there's photos online on one of my friends' Facebooks of this dude's face just all messed up. That was pretty wild. I mean, I saw like FBI agents come in there and like drag someone out, just a caller. There was 2 bank robbers that were active bank robbers working in the CDG office that got caught robbing banks. I mean, you know, the fact that there was a heroin kingpin working out of that office, and he was selling, you know, we're talking about kingpin selling massive amounts of heroin out of that office. I mean, yeah, one time the managers dared Pat to chug a bottle of Everclear.
Oh, Jesus.
And he did. I wasn't there that day, but I came in the next day and they're like, yo, Pat almost died. Like they took him out in an ambulance because he chugged a bottle of Everclear. There was everyone was doing ecstasy in the office. There was one guy that would set up one of the cubicles was just selling bootleg shit, like you're on Canal Street in New York City. So he would sell like bootleg rap CDs and jerseys, bootleg jerseys set up. And one time, I don't remember what team it was, but this guy sold a bootleg jersey to someone, and that guy was pissed when he came in. He didn't realize it was bootleg until the next day, and he tried to start a fight with the dude who sold him the bootleg jersey.
I mean, rightfully so. You think you're getting authentic, and you get a one, and then you get roasted by your friends about it. Oh no!
Oh my god! I can't remember what the story was, but I think that the name was spelled wrong, and he didn't realize that everyone was making fun of him.
Yeah, can't have
that.
You
were a kid, you bring it home. I got you a jersey that you always wanted.
Yeah,
it's like Sean Kemp, but there's no M in it.
Right, Sean Kemp. Yeah. So I actually worked at one of these call centers whenever I was in high school. And I remember walking in, and I was 16, 17 at the time, and looking around and seeing some of the, I'll say, riffraff that was going on in this place. At 14, was it mind-blowing to you? Like, how overwhelming was that environment with open heroin, open people beating each other up? How was that at 14?
I remember when I walked in that first day, this one manager pointed out this guy, Mr. Smythe, who's in the documentary, who's since become a good friend. Shout out to Mr. Smythe, but he's a character. He doesn't look like anyone you've seen before. He's got these big bushy eyebrows, and he's got these boots that look like they've seen Vietnam War. And this manager turned to me, this 14-year-old kid, and said, "You see that guy over there? One day, I guarantee he's going to come in with an AK-47 and shoot this whole place up." And that was, and me and Mr. Smythe he was just a misunderstood guy, really nice guy. We ended up being friends, but yeah. So as 14, I mean, it was definitely wild. The first thing I thought, I was like, someone needs to write a book about this. These are characters right out of a novel, like out of a Steinbeck novel or Jack Kerouac or something. And yeah, I was very entertained by all the chaos there. I just thought it was so interesting that here we were, you know, calling for police organizations. So I was a graffiti writer. That's all I did as a teenager. I grew up doing graffiti. And one time my house got raided. And I told the detectives that raided my house, I'm like, I work for you guys. What? I work for you guys. They're like, what? I'm like, I raise money for you guys over the phone. They're like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Shut the fuck up. Like, I thought I was just raising money for the cops, you know?
Yeah.
That's wild. You worked there, man. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so it was completely different. At the time, I was very conservative. Like, I was gonna go to school to be a pastor. I had already decided to go to like seminary, so being in that environment was very different for me. But it was a job that I worked in Florida in the summertime where it wasn't crazy ass hot. So I was like, "I'll just call. That should be simple." It was way more. The $200. Like, you make it sound like it was easy. The turnover rate at those places were so high because it's not easy, man. Like, the things, Pat being as good as he was at it is really insane. Because going through those sheets that you had, and I was glad you really focused in on some of the sheets, there was an answer for everything. And I was kind of blown away at how quick people would be like, oh, this is the problem. Boom, I know exactly where to go. It really does teach you a lot about preparation too. Like, These folks are
Oh, yeah.
prepared. They're prepared for the scamming.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I learned a lot from working at CDG, just in terms of sales, and then persistence, and confidence, and then just being able to be around different types of people. Like Farouk, who was in episode 1. Shout out to Farouk, but he described CDG as like the United Nations, because you had so many different types of people, all different backgrounds, like races, religions, like socioeconomic classes, and we're all just in this place, doing this in this crazy work environment. And but you learn a lot about interacting with people from that type of world.
Yeah, I'd say so. We want to respect your time. I know that you got another interview back to back here. So just one last final thing. In the scene where Pat goes to the airport, gets in the waiting area to get on the plane, and then decides, I can't fly, I can't do this, we're going to have to drive to Florida. I was screaming at my television. I was like, just push him on the plane. Just like knock him out, sedate him, do whatever you have to do.
Give him some Everclear.
However you get him on this plane. This is a man that needs to be on an airplane right now instead of making the entire crew drive all the way down to Florida. Did you try to like physically move him onto the airplane?
Well, I'll let Adam take that one, because I don't think Adam's ever seen anything like that in his entire life.
I mean, I thought that kind of shit only happened in movies. Like it literally, we're like at the line to get in. We're the last people about to board, and he's like, "No, I'm not getting on." And we had to edit a lot of that out, because like we were flipping out at him. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I was happy that we let it go, because imagine if we gotten on that plane and then he had a fucking anxiety attack and started freaking out in the air or something, and we had to like make an emergency landing. But it was wild.
Would have been great promotion though.
Yeah.
Would have been great promotion.
It was it was not fun. You don't want to ever have that happen,
Our faces were just like, I remember seeing Adam's face, and I was like, oh my God.
But it's Pat. I mean,
but it's Pat. We love him.
That's just one of a million crazy things he did during that shoot. And we just happened to film it.
One really quick last question.
Yeah,
what was the average contribution that a caller would give?
So we would do, so they've gone up. Back in the day, we used to do like $55 for the gold level and $35 for the silver. So 55, but every year the goal was to, or not even every year, they would call you for a new campaign. Like sometimes it was every week. And your goal, you would see what they donated last time, is to give a little more get a little more than that. So if they gave 55 last time, you want to bring it 65. Now a week later, we're calling for firefighters. All right, now we're asking for 75. So they keep, and now I've been getting these new calls, and I think they're around, they're like, people are asking for like $100 now, But I mean, it was a lot of money. If you think about all that money from so many years, we're talking about, it's a lot of fucking money that just like poof, gone.
$1 billion. $1 billion.
It's crazy, and it's such a simple scam. And the people that run those organizations are real pieces of shit. And I hope that this sheds new light on it. I hope maybe the fraternal order police and senators, whoever the case may be, people should watch this. And then there should be a change, because it's bullshit that all these people are getting scammed out of their hard-earned money. So it was a great watch, though. Fascinating characters throughout. Check it out on HBO or on Max. Thank you guys for joining us. It's my favorite show of the summer. It's the best.
Man,
I hope there's a season 2.
Thank you.
I hope there's a season 2 where more people go to jail, and we get to follow up on it and see what happens in the after effects of the show coming out. So great job, guys. I absolutely love it.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah,
More people watch it. We'd love to do a season 2. So just, keep watching it, keep spreading the word.
It's awesome.
And we really appreciate you guys. And we're here anytime you want us on or need anything. And one last thing just to say is, like, we Americans are very generous. Americans are very generous people. And if this money could go to good causes, good veterans charities, good, police charities, cancer charities, firefighters, that would be great. A lot of good money, a lot of good work could be done with this money. But our goal is to get that money to the right place instead of just going to, benefit, people at the top and where it doesn't go to help any of those causes.
I have a win-all solution. What if the real police just take over this fake call center and just take all the money and actually put it in a charity and just guys keep their jobs. They keep the sort of kind of predatory but effective, fundraising strategy, but just it goes to the right place. I think that would kind of make everybody happy.
Well,
so they should go back to fundraising. My
question always was like, why do cops need to raise money? Don't our taxes pay for cops? You don't see coal miners getting on the phone trying to raise money, and they should be.
They should, yeah.
Like, why are cops like? We pay so much money in taxes for them. They don't need to raise money.
Amen. Show the receipts.
Yeah,
or the veterans.
It's a great point.
Scam. It's yeah. I mean, teachers need to be out raising money. Coal miners, not fucking cops. Come on.
Yeah, or maybe.
Well, if you look at the Police Benevolence Association, they're like one of the people we did interviews with, or one of the organizations. They're talking about this all over the internet, which is interesting because they stopped, at least in New Jersey, stopped using telemarketers. And yeah, I mean,
they love the show.
Yeah, they love the show. I mean, I think that unfortunately,
supportive. The PBA.
They've been really supportive. I mean, it's a little bit complicated, man. I think greed is a fucking bitch, and that's what we found from this. And on all sides, it's a bitch.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Love the show. Good luck with everything. Thank you. Looking forward to season 2. I hope there's a season 2.
All right. Awesome, man. We'll keep you guys posted.
And Pat would love to do the show eventually when his wife gets better. So, maybe if this thing keeps steamrolling, we can get, we'd love to get Pat to come on and talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him too. All right, thanks guys.
Great. Thank you guys
so much. All the best.
Good
luck.